Good evening and welcome. Tonight we're going to be continuing our read through of the On This Day book, A History of the World in 366 Days. First, I want to thank all the happy squirrels for purchasing this book on my Amazon wishlist. Thank you so much to all the happy squirrels. You can check out my wishlist down there. It's pretty picked through, to be honest. A lot of people, including me, I buy things off of it, but a lot of things have been taken and are in my possession already, but there's still some things there. Go check it out if there's anything you want to donate to this channel and earn a shout out. So this month we're going to be reading about the month of February and seeing some historical things that happened throughout every single day in February. Now, when you think of February, what do you think of? That's right, Valentine's Day. And I have the perfect Valentine's Day gift for you, and it's from this video's sponsor. Let me get it for you. It is Rose Forever. Look at this bouquet in a beautiful heart-shaped box. Let me take off the top for you. You can see the Rose Forever logo here. And look at these. It is a gorgeous pink color in a little rose shape. And these are real roses. They have been preserved in a way that they're going to last you a long time. I have another bouquet that they've sent me. They still look fantastic. They sent it to me in July. It's now February. They still look great. But I like this one so much more. It's so pretty and so sweet. And look, this is perfect for Valentine's because this box has a little compartment down here that you can put some like chocolates or a card or something in here. Perfect for your partner, significant other, even mother, grandmother, sister. I'm going to give this to my sister. So if you would like to purchase the perfect Valentine's gift, head to my link down in the description there and use my code Geographica25 to get $25 off of your order. It's a really great deal. Check that out now. If you want to get a beautiful bouquet of roses in not just pink but in red, you can get blue, you can get black, even if the person you love is into like black roses. You can even get like orange ones, like my brother-in-law that I live with. His favorite color is orange. You can get him orange roses. They come in so many amazing colors and they look just spectacular. So check that out. And thank you to Rose Forever for being my sponsor today for this video. Set that aside very carefully. I love it so much. Now let's get on to the history on this day in February 1st, 1985, searching for aliens. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence, or the SETI Institute, started looking for alien life in the universe. It remains the only U.S. research organization focused on finding evidence of extraterrestrial activity. Looking for a pencil I can use so I don't have to use my finger. There's one that fell on the floor by my foot. Can I grab it? Oh, yes. I have grabbed it. Okay. This is much easier to read, this tiny book. 1960, Greensboro protests. When 4 black students were refused service in a Woolworth store in Greensboro, North Carolina, they stayed put and staged a protest against racial segregation in the U.S. This marked the first of many Greensboro protests against inequality. Also on this day, in 1895, Fountains Valley in Pretoria was declared the first protected nature reserve on the African continent by Paul Kruger, President of the South African Republic. In 2003, disaster struck when Space Shuttle Columbia exploded over Texas shortly before landing, killing the 7 astronauts on board. And in 2009, Johanna Sigurðardóttir spent her first day as Prime Minister of Iceland. She became the first national head of government from the LGBTQ community. And born on this day in 1878, Alfred Hayos, Hungarian swimmer. He was the first modern Olympic swimming champion to win 2 gold medals and 1 silver medal over his career. And in 1902, Langston Hughes, Black American poet and novelist. As a founder of the Harlem Renaissance movement, he wrote about the lives of working-class Black people. Let me know if you have a February birthday coming up this month, so you can find out what history happened on your birthday. Let's move on to February 2nd. In 1709, Island Castaway. After being marooned alone on a deserted island for more than 4 years, Scottish naval officer Alexander Selkirk was finally rescued. 1925, Heroic Huskies. Teams of husky dogs traveled more than 620 miles across winter snow to the remote Alaskan town of Nome. They were carrying life-saving diphtheria serum, which prevented an outbreak of the deadly disease. 1912, spectacular stunt. U.S. daredevil Frederick Rodman Law performed the first stunt for a film when he parachuted from the torch of the Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor. Also on this day, in 1887, Groundhog Day got underway in Pennsylvania when a groundhog named Puxatawney Phil was first given the job of predicting a longer winter or an early spring. 1943, the Battle of Stalingrad, the bloodiest battle of World War II, ended in Soviet victory. 2004, Swiss tennis ace Roger Federer took the world #1 ranking and maintained it for a record-breaking 237 weeks. And born this day in 1977, one of my favorite singers, Shakira, Colombian singer and songwriter. She has received hundreds of music awards for her memorable pop songs and unique Latin American style. On to February 3rd. In 1982, heavy lifting. The Russian heavy transport helicopter Mi-26, piloted by a crew of 2, lifted a mass of 125,156 pounds up to a height of 6,560 feet in Moscow. This was the heaviest load ever lifted by helicopter. 1931, earthquake in Hawke's Bay. The worst natural disaster in New Zealand's history, the Hawke's Bay earthquake shook the east coast of North Island, killing 258 people. 1995, piloting in space. U.S. astronaut Eileen Collins became the first female space shuttle pilot when she flew the Discovery close to Russia's Mir space station. The mission lasted 8 days. Also on this day, in 1870, the 15th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was ratified, ensuring that Black men had the right to vote. 1966, the Soviet Union's Luna 9 touched down on the moon. It was the first spacecraft to survive landing on the lunar surface. 1972, the deadliest blizzard in recorded history began in Iran, killing 4,000 people and destroying about 200 villages. And born this day in 1790, Gideon Mantell, British paleontologist. While reconstructing a fossil, he realized it belonged to an enormous extinct animal, which he named Iguanodon. And in 1970, Warwick Davis, British actor. He has appeared in various roles in the Star Wars films. Born with a rare form of dwarfism, he co-founded the Little People UK charity. On to February 4th. In 1945, the Yalta Conference. 3 leaders, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, and Soviet leader Joseph Stalin met at the Yalta Conference in the Soviet Union to decide the future of Europe after World War II. 1993, Znamya satellite. Russian scientists reflected a brief flash of sunlight over the night skies of Europe using a mirror on the Znamya satellite. This was a test to see whether they could increase daylight hours on Earth. In 1936, synthetic radium. Radium, the radioactive metal found in some rocks, was produced artificially by U.S. scientist John J. Livingood, the first time an element had been created synthetically. Also on this day, in 960, Zhao Guanyin was crowned Taizu, the first emperor of the Song dynasty. This marked the start of 3 centuries of Song rule in southern China. 1938, Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the first full-length animated feature film, was released and went on to become a huge box office hit. In 2004, Mark Zuckerberg launched a social networking site for Harvard University students. This was Facebook, now a social media giant. And born this day, in 1868, Constance Georgine Markievicz, Irish countess. She was the first woman elected as a member of the British Parliament. And in 1918, Ida Lupino, British film actor. She played many inspiring roles in Hollywood before becoming one of the first women to direct a film. On to February 5th, in 1869, striking gold. The world's biggest gold nugget was discovered in the Australian town of Molliagul. 2 British miners struck gold when they unearthed the so-called Welcome Stranger, which weighed an astonishing 158 pounds. 1661, Qing ruler. Emperor Kangxi of the Qing dynasty began his reign in China. His rule lasted a record-breaking 61 years, making him the longest reigning emperor in Chinese history. 1852, Museum of Art. The State Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, Russia, opened to the public. It contained a collection of paintings belonging to Empress Catherine the Great and is now one of the world's most spectacular art museums. Also on this day in 1885, King Leopold II of Belgium set up the Congo Free State. He exploited the wild rubber growing on the land for his own personal gain. Boo, we hate King Leopold II on this channel. 1953, children in Britain could finally eat as much chocolate as they wanted when candy rationing ended 8 years after the end of World War II. And born on this day in 1985, Cristiano Ronaldo, Portuguese soccer player. The winner of 31 major trophies, he has been awarded the Ballon d'Or for the world's best player 5 times and has scored more than 700 goals. February 6th, 1921, Chaplin the director. The silent comedy film The Kid was released, starring Charlie Chaplin as a kindly tramp who found an abandoned baby and took care of him. This was the first time Chaplin directed a feature film. 2018, Round the World Trip. SpaceX's Falcon Heavy rocket carried a Tesla car into space. The automobile is still floating around Earth, with a dummy dressed in a spacesuit in the driver's seat and items in the glove box. 2009, Brainy Bees. Scientists proved that honeybees can do basic math by solving arithmetic problems, according to a study published by RMIT University in Australia. Despite their small brains, the bees seemed to have understood how to add and subtract in an experiment involving a maze. I don't know where the word avoid came from in my brain. Also on this day in 1778, the Treaty of Alliance was signed by the U.S. and France in Paris during the American Revolution. It was the first time the U.S. was recognized as a free country. 1840, the Treaty of Waitangi was signed by British officials and Maori chiefs in the Bay of Islands. The British later used the treaty to claim rulership over New Zealand. 1993, the indigenous Sami people of Scandinavia celebrated their national day for the first time with hundreds of festivities, including flying the Sami flag. Born this day in 1945, Bob Marley, Jamaican singer and songwriter, this legendary artist brought reggae music to the masses with his influential and inspiring songs calling for social justice and equality. Sorry for the doggo outside. February 7th, 1959, record flight. A flight endurance world record was set when two young pilots, Robert Tim and John Cook, flew an aircraft over the Great Basin Desert in Nevada for 64 days, 22 hours, and 19 minutes without stopping. Their plane was refueled in the air. 1984, walking in space. U.S. astronaut Bruce McCandless performed the first untethered spacewalk when he left NASA's Space Shuttle Challenger in Earth's orbit and moved freely for 90 minutes, enjoying the views from 170 miles above the planet. 1845, smashed to pieces. The ancient Roman portland vase, which dates back to the 1st century BCE, was broken by a visitor to the British Museum in an act of vandalism. In the late 1980s, the glass vase was restored to its original state. Also on this day, in 1992, the Maastricht Treaty was signed by 12 Western European nations, laying the foundations for the European Union. 2008, South African Ram Barkai set a record by swimming in the most southerly part of the world, off Antarctica's Queen Maud Land. Brr. 2014, scientists dated the Happisburgh footprints of Norfolk, UK, to be at least 800,000 years old, the oldest outside Africa. Born this day, 1978, Motola Jalade Ekinde, Nigerian actor, singer, business leader, and activist. She is featured in around 300 Nollywood films. 1979, Tawakkol Karman, Yemeni human rights activist. She received the Nobel Peace Prize in 2011 for her leading role in a pro-democracy protest movement. Next we have February 8th, 1865, genetics. Austrian monk Gregor Mendel presented his research on the inherited characteristics of pea plants to the Brunn Society for National Science in modern-day Czech Republic. His work led to a better understanding of human genetics. 1974, stay in space. NASA's longest space mission was recorded when 3 U.S. astronauts completed 84 days on the U.S. space station Skylab. The mission demonstrated that humans could live and work in space for extended periods of time. 1672, optics experiment. English scientist Isaac Newton showed the Royal Society in London how a prism could be used to bend sunlight and reveal its spectrum of colors. This led to the development of modern optics, the study of the behavior of light. Also on this day, 1587, after 19 years in captivity, Mary, Queen of Scots, was beheaded for her part in a plot to kill Queen Elizabeth I of England. 1841, British inventor Henry Fox Talbot patented his calotype process, the first photographic process to produce a positive image from a negative. 1904, Japan launched a torpedo attack on Port Arthur, a Russian naval base in China, triggering the Russo-Japanese War. Born this day in 1828, Jules Verne, French author. He wrote many bestsellers, including 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Around the World in 80 Days. On to February 9th, 1995, Navajo Tribute. Bernard Harris tested spacesuits in sub-zero temperatures in Earth's orbit, becoming the first black astronaut to carry out a spacewalk. he dedicated his walk to the Navajo Nation and carried their flag on his adventure. 1964, Beatlemania begins. I love the Beatles. An appearance by British band The Beatles on the US TV program The Ed Sullivan Show drew 73 million viewers. Also known as the Fab Four, the band experienced frenzied Beatlemania wherever they went, leading to more British stars finding fame in the US. 1971, baseball icon. Black American baseball player Leroy Satchel Paige was the first black player to be nominated for the Baseball Hall of Fame for an illustrious career spanning 50 years. Also on this day, 1969, the Boeing 747 jumbo jet took off from Everett, Washington on its first flight, transforming the aviation industry. 2009, Egyptian archaeologists found around 30 mummies in a burial chamber at Saqqara, dating back more than 2,600 years. In 2019, the South Korean film Parasite by Bong Joon-ho became the first non-English language film to win a Best Picture Oscar. That was a really good day. I remember it so clearly. Born this day, 1854, Aletta Henriette Jacobs, Dutch doctor and activist. She was the first official female university student in the Netherlands and one of the first Dutch women to become a doctor. 1932, Gerhard Richter, German artist. He mixed together a wide range of styles and subjects in his paintings and photography. Next is February 10th. 1942, Going Gold. The first gold record was given to U.S. big band leader Glenn Miller for Chattanooga Choo Choo. Miller's record label presented him with a copy of the single Sprayed in Gold to celebrate 1.2 million sales. Today, gold records are awarded to singles that sell 500,000 copies in the U.S. or 400,000 copies in the U.K. I wonder why. 1996, Man vs. Machine. IBM's Deep Blue became the first computer to beat a world chess champion when it defeated Garry Kasparov in the first game of a match held in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. 1722, A Pirate's End. Swashbuckling pirate Bartholomew Blackbard Roberts died in battle. During his life, he had plundered about 400 ships in the Caribbean and off the coasts of the Americas and Africa. After the British Royal Navy shot him, his body was buried at sea and never found. Also on this day, in 1763, the Treaty of Paris ended the 7 Years' War, the first truly global conflict, which had spread from Europe to the Americas. 1863, the patent for the first artificial leg was granted to U.S. inventor Dubois de Parmelee. 2013, Pope Benedict XVI declared his intention to retire. He was the first pope to resign since Gregory XII in 1415. Born on this day in 1835, Christian Andreas Victor Hensen, German zoologist. He discovered the important part played by minute aquatic organisms, which he called plankton in marine food chains. And in 1842, Agnes Mary Clerk, Irish astronomer. Her book, A Popular History of Astronomy During the 19th Century, simplified the science of astronomy for Victorian readers. Moving on to February 11th. 2014 Olympic first. German Corinna Voigt became the first ever women's ski jumping champion when she won the gold medal at the Sochi Winter Olympics in Russia. 1990 Mandela freed. South African activist Nelson Mandela, who fought against apartheid, was released after 27 years in prison. He had been arrested on charges of conspiracy against the government. In 660 BCE, National Foundation Day. According to tradition, Japan was founded on this day by Jimmu, the first Japanese emperor. This date is now celebrated every year in Japan as a public holiday known as National Foundation Day. Also on this day, in 1576, the King of Denmark gave Tycho Brahe the island of Fyn, where the astronomer built his own observatory to study the skies. 1929, with the signing of the Lateran Treaty, the Vatican City in Rome became a country, the smallest in the world to this day. 2011, President Hosni Mubarak of Egypt resigned after 30 years in power, following protests against his rule across the country. And born on this day, in 1930, Barbara Mary Quant, British fashion designer. Her mini skirts and hot pants became fashion necessities in the 1960s. And in 1972, Kelly Slater, U.S. surfer, he won a record-breaking 11 World Surfing Championships. Moving on to February 12th, 1947, Dior's new look. French fashion designer Christian Dior presented his new look collection in Paris. Models wore elegant jackets and stylish, form-fitting dresses, which became a fashion sensation around the world. 1994, Stealing the Scream. Two thieves broke into the National Gallery in Oslo, Norway. They sneaked out with Norwegian artist Edvard Munch's most famous painting, The Scream. Almost 3 months later, it was safely recovered and returned. 1912, The Last Emperor. Nearly 2,000 years of imperial rule ended in China when 6-year-old Emperor Puyi was forced to abdicate after 3 years in power. Also on this day, in 1818, Chile officially declared its independence from Spain after nearly 300 years of colonial rule. 1909, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or the NAACP, was founded to bring an end to racial discrimination in the U.S. 2001, Near Shoemaker became the first space probe to orbit and land on an asteroid, 433 Eros. Born on this day in 1809, Charles Darwin, British naturalist. His theory of natural selection changed the course of science and our view of history. 1881, Anna Pavlova, Russian ballet dancer. She was the first ballerina to tour the world and is famous for her solo role in The Dying Swan. On to February 13th, 1258, the Siege of Baghdad. After a 13-day siege, the city of Baghdad surrendered to Mongol ruler Hulagu Khan and his army. Thousands were killed in the bloodshed that followed, and the Islamic Golden Age came to a devastating end. 1866, daylight robbery. U.S. outlaw Jesse James carried out his first bank robbery, stealing $15,000 from the Clay County Savings Association in Missouri. This was one of the first bank robberies carried out in broad daylight. Do you think that's how much he stole in 1866, or how much that would be today? Because if that was 1866, holy moly, that's a lot of money. 1988, bobsled heroes. With no history in winter sports and limited training, 4 Jamaicans competed in the 4-person bobsled event at the Winter Olympics in Calgary, Canada. They finished last, but were celebrated as heroes for their sportsmanship and team spirit. Also on this day, 1945, during World War II, the UK and US began 3 days of bombing raids on the city of Dresden, Germany. The resulting firestorm destroyed more than 2.5 square miles of the city center. 2004, the largest known diamond in the universe, a white dwarf star, was discovered by astronomers. They named it Lucy after a song by the Beatles. That's perfect. 2008, Australian Prime Minister Kevin Rudd formally apologized to the first Australians for the suffering caused by previous governments. Born on this day in 1879, Sarojini Naidu, Indian poet and activist. She was the first woman president on the Indian National Congress. And in 1908, Pauline Frederick, U.S. journalist, the first woman to be employed as a network news correspondent. She inspired other women to work in the media industry. On to February 14th, 1946, ENIAC announced. The first electronic general-purpose computer called Electronic Numerical Integrator and Computer, or ENIAC, was revealed to the public at the University of Pennsylvania. An all-women team programmed the computer. In 269 CE, it's Valentine's Day. Saint Valentine was martyred in Rome. Many centuries later, his saint's day came to be associated with love letters and romance. 1556, Akbar the Great. The third Mughal Emperor Akbar came to the throne at the age of 13. For the next 5 decades, he expanded Mughal rule across much of the Indian subcontinent. And 2016, revolutionary robot. Sophia, the first artificial intelligence humanoid robot, was turned on during her first public appearance in Austin, Texas. She made speeches, told jokes, and appeared to show empathy. Also on this day, in 1779, British explorer James Cook was killed in a fight with locals in Hawaii during his third voyage of discovery. 1928, Scottish scientist Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin, the world's first antibiotic. And in 1949, the Israeli parliament called Knesset met for the first time in the capital city of Jerusalem following national elections. Someone revved their motor so loud during that. I'm so sorry. Born this day in 1914, Margaret E. Knight, U.S. inventor. She had 27 patents to her name, but is best known for creating flat-bottomed paper bags. On to February 15th, 1932, going for gold. U.S. athlete Eddie Egan won Olympic gold with the bobsled team at Lake Placid, New York. As he had won gold for boxing at the Olympics in 1920, he became the only person to win golds at the Summer and Winter Games in different sports. 1943, Wartime Women. A poster of a female worker saying, "We can do it," was put up on the walls of Westinghouse factories in the U.S. during World War II. Originally a call for employees to work harder, the poster later became a symbol for empowered women. 1965, the Canadian flag. Canada's official national flag was raised for the first time on Parliament Hill in Ottawa. The maple leaf at its center has been a national symbol for centuries. Also on this day, in 1942, thousands of Allied soldiers became prisoners of war after the key Pacific base of Singapore fell to Japanese forces in World War II. 2001, the first draft of the Complete Human Genome, the set of instructions that make up our genetic code, was published by scientists. I remember this because I was in high school taking a biology class, and my biology teacher was losing his mind over this. 2013, a meteor blew up with the force of a nuclear explosion over Chelyabinsk, Russia, destroying buildings and injuring 1,500 people. Born this day in 1820, Susan B. Anthony, U.S. women's rights activist. She was an influential social reformer and the president of the National American Women's Suffrage Association. Have you seen people's dash cams of this meteor? Like, the Russians are just, like, not impressed by this giant explosion over them. They're just like, oh. Anyway, February 16th, 2003, infamous heist. Thieves broke into the Antwerp Diamond Center in Belgium, sneaked past 10 different types of security measure, and made off with $100 million in diamonds, gold, and jewelry. Lots of thieving things happening. 1946, chopper takes flight. The Sikorsky S-51 took off on its first test flight. It was used as a communication and evacuation helicopter by the U.S. Air Force and was also the first helicopter to be used by private companies. And in 1923, tomb discovery. When British archaeologist Howard Carter entered the burial chamber of Pharaoh Tutankhamun in Thebes, Egypt, he found ancient treasures undisturbed since 1324 BCE. As well as the mummy of the boy king inside a gold coffin, there were clothes, jewelry, games, and food for the afterlife. Also on this day in 1857, U.S. Congress approved funding for the Columbia Institution for the Instruction of the Deaf and Dumb and the Blind. It was the first school for students with hearing, speech, and sight difficulties. 1933. The existence of a type of invisible material called dark matter was suggested by U.S. astronomer Fritz Zwicky. And 1945. The Alaska Equal Rights Act was signed in the U.S. to prevent discrimination against the indigenous peoples of Alaska. And born on this day, 1973, Cathy Freeman, Indigenous Australian sprinter. Among the first Australians, she was the first to win gold at the Commonwealth Games and gold in an Olympic solo event. On to February 17th. 1454 unique feast. At an extravagant banquet known as the Feast of the Pheasant in Lille in modern-day France, guests were treated to spectacular entertainment, such as an enormous pie with musicians playing inside. Cool. 1863 Red Cross. A group of Swiss citizens in Geneva set up the International Committee for Relief to the Wounded, later renamed the International Committee of the Red Cross, to help people injured in conflicts. 1972, Volkswagen Beetle. When the 15,700,034th Volkswagen Beetle rolled off the production line, the Beetle overtook Henry Ford's Model T as the world's best-selling car. Its compact design and affordable price made it a hit with drivers around the globe. Also on this day, in 1936, The Phantom, a crime-fighting cartoon character created by U.S. writer Lee Falk, first appeared in comics. Although he had no special powers, his heroic actions, colorful costume, and mask made him the world's first superhero. 1869, the periodic table of elements was first written down by Russian chemist Dmitry Mendeleev. And 2008, Kosovo declared independence from Serbia, following years of conflict between the Serbians and Kosovans, who have Albanian heritage. Born this day, 1917, Wangod, traditional Filipino tattooist. She is the last and oldest person to perform her craft. 1963, Michael Jordan, Black American basketball player. I mean, he did eventually play baseball, but basketball player. He led the Chicago Bulls to 6 National Basketball Association championships and is considered one of the greatest basketball players of all time. Definitely not a good baseball player, but a fantastic basketball player. On to February 18th, 1911, the first airmail. The world's first official airmail was sent from Allahabad in India. French pilot Henri Piquet delivered 6,500 letters, sealed with a special stamp, to the city of Naini, 6 miles away. 2015 Sea dragon species. The rare ruby sea dragon was reported in the journal Royal Society Open Science. It was the first new sea dragon species to be discovered in 150 years. This 10-inch long fish lives off Western Australia and is named for its red color. 1930 Flying cow. Elm Farm Ollie was the first cow to fly in a plane and be milked in the air. She flew 72 miles in an aircraft over Missouri, so scientists could study whether altitude had any effect on how much milk she produced. Also on this day in 1852, a giant glass fish tank was ordered by the London Zoo This fish house opened a year later as the world's first public aquarium. 1930, the distant planet Pluto, now classified as a dwarf planet as of 2006, was spotted by U.S. astronomer Clyde Tombaugh in a photograph. 1978, the first Ironman triathlon was held in Hawaii to settle a debate about whether runners, swimmers, or cyclists were the fittest athletes. Born this day in 1898, Enzo Ferrari, Italian racing driver, he founded the famous sports car company Ferrari, known for its fast luxury cars. On to February 19th, 2002, mapping Mars. NASA's Mars Odyssey spacecraft began mapping the surface of the red planet. It has since sent back thousands of images and located ice on the Martian surface. It remains the longest active spacecraft around a planet other than Earth. 1914, special delivery. Taking advantage of the inexpensive U.S. postal system, the parents of 4-year-old Charlotte May Piersdorf sent her in the mail to her grandparents more than 73 miles away. Her train trip was chronicled in the book Mailing May. That's funny. 1977, seafloor discovery. Hydrothermal deep-sea vents found on the seafloor were seen for the first time by scientists on board the U.S. submersible Alvin in the Galapagos Rift in the Pacific Ocean. The nutrient-rich hot springs provide a unique habitat for clams and crabs. Also on this day, in 1600, the Huaynaputina volcano erupted in the Andes Mountains of Peru, killing about 1,500 people and destroying surrounding villages. 1942, Executive Order 9066 was issued by U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt for Japanese Americans to be locked up in internment camps during World War II. 2008, the world's longest-serving political leader, Cuban President Fidel Castro, resigned after 31 years in power. And born this day in 1473, Nicholas Copernicus, Polish genius. He was not only an accomplished astronomer, but also a mathematician, physician, economist, translator, and a diplomat. Next is February 20th, 1877, ballet premiere. At the Bolshoi Theater in Moscow, Russia, Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake, about a princess who transforms into a swan, was first performed in public. Despite poor reviews at the time, Swan Lake has since become one of the world's most popular ballets. 1986, A Home in Space. The Soviet Union launched the first module of the space station Mir. It would take 10 years to build fully, with 6 more modules being added. 1707, decline of a dynasty. The Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb died after 49 years in power. He was the last effective ruler of the Mughal Empire, which was at its biggest during his reign. His territory covered most of the Indian subcontinent. Born this day, 1927, is Sidney Poitier, Bahamian American actor and film director. His long career in film and theater paved the way for other black actors. In 1988, another one of my favorite singers ever, Rihanna, Barbadian singer and songwriter. She has launched multiple global companies. Oh, I forgot the also on this day. Also on this day, 1913, construction started on Canberra, Australia's capital city. 1965, NASA's Ranger 8 lunar probe took close-up pictures of the moon's surface for the first time. And in 2012, seeds buried by squirrels 30,000 years ago were used to grow plants by scientists in Russia. On to February 21st, 1804, the first steam locomotive. British engineer Richard Trevithick's steam-powered railroad locomotive made its first journey. In just over 4 hours, the steam engine hauled 5 wagons, 10 tons of iron, and 70 people almost 10 miles. 4 hours for 10 miles, but it was the early 1800s. Another thief. 1858, alarm raised. Oh, never mind. U.S. inventor Edwin Holmes installed the first electric burglar alarm in a home in Boston, Massachusetts. Within a few years, he had sold more than 1,200 alarms to safety-conscious customers, thwarting would-be burglars. Stopping the burglars for once. 1965, Malcolm X shot. Malcolm X, a black American Muslim activist, was killed in New York City. He had fought for racial justice for black Americans. And also on this day, in 1848, German thinkers Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels published their influential political ideas in the Communist Manifesto. In 1974, Josip Broz Tito was declared Yugoslavia's president for life by the country's new constitution. And 1995, U.S. adventurer Steve Fossett landed in Canada after 4 days of flying solo across the Pacific Ocean in a hot air balloon. And born this day in 1933, Nina Simone, black American singer and songwriter. She was a campaigner for racial justice. On to February 22nd, 1977, Dolly the sheep. Scottish scientists announced the existence of Dolly the sheep, the world's first successfully cloned adult mammal. She was grown from a cell taken from an adult sheep, making her an identical genetic copy or clone of that sheep. 1935, Hollywood's first interracial dance duo. The American comedy movie The Little Colonel premiered in the U.S. Child star Shirley Temple and entertainer Bill Bojangles Robinson danced together on the stairs in what was the first mixed-race dance partnership in a Hollywood movie. I wonder if that scene's on YouTube. It's so cute. Check it out if it is. 2011 Soccer Fury. Tempers boiled over during a soccer match between Argentinian teams Claypole and Victoriano Arenas. The referee gave a record-breaking 36 red cards after a brawl erupted on the pitch. The players, substitutes, and coaches of both teams are sent off. So I'm guessing the game stopped. How else do you play? Also on this day in 1848, the February Revolution started in France, with large crowds gathering in Paris to rebel against the monarchy. In 1924, the story of Bobby the Wonder Dog, who found his way back home to Silverton, Oregon from 3,000 miles away, was published in the town newspaper. And 1959, U.S. racing car legend Lee Petty won the first Daytona 500 race in Florida. And born this day in 1876, Zitkala Sa, Yankton Dakota activist. She founded the National Council of American Indians to protect the rights, citizenship, and culture of Indigenous Americans. Next is February 23rd, 1954, the polio vaccine. The first injections of the polio vaccine were given to children at Arsenal Elementary School in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Developed by U.S. Dr. Jonas Salk, the vaccine was used to protect millions from the disease. In 1945, Marines on Mount Suribachi. During the Battle of Iwo Jima, U.S. Marines raised their national flag on Mount Suribachi on the Pacific island of Iwo Jima after reaching the summit of the mountain. U.S. forces later took control of the Japanese island. And in 532, the Hagia Sophia. Byzantine Emperor Justinian I ordered the construction of a grand Christian church that would become the center of the Eastern Orthodox faith for almost 1,000 years. Hagia Sophia still stands today in Istanbul, Turkey, but it is now a mosque. Also on this day, in 1807, the Slave Trade Act, proposed by William Wilberforce to abolish the slave trade in the British Empire, was approved by Parliament. In 1987, astronomers spotted light from supernova 1987A, an exploding star. This was the first supernova to be studied in detail. And in 2019, Argentinian soccer player Lionel Messi scored his 50th hat-trick for FC Barcelona as they beat Sevilla 4-2 to top the Spanish league. Born this day in 1868, W.B. Du Bois, Black American civil rights activist, he co-founded the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or the NAACP. On to February 24, 1739, the Battle of Karnal. Persian ruler Nadir Shah's invasion of the Indian subcontinent triggered a battle with Mughal Emperor Muhammad Shah in the city of Karnal. Nadir claimed victory and brought about the end of the Mughal Empire. 1923, the Flying Scotsman. The steam locomotive Flying Scotsman began its service with the London and North Eastern Railway, carrying passengers from London to Edinburgh in Scotland. During a test run, it became the first locomotive to reach a record-breaking speed of 100 miles per hour. And in 2018, the biggest art class. At the annual Mascara Festival in Quezon City in the Philippines, 16,692 art enthusiasts gathered for the world's largest art lesson ever. Those taking part learned how to draw colorful carnival masks in a class that ran for 45 minutes. Also on this day in 1848, King Louis Philippe I was removed from power during the February Revolution and later made his escape by disguising himself as an ordinary man named Mr. Smith and catching a cab out of Paris, France. That's one way to flee the country. 1920. At a meeting of about 2,000 people in Munich, Germany, politician Adolf Hitler founded the Nazi Party on his path to taking control of Germany. And born this day in 1304, Ibn Battuta, Moroccan globetrotter. He traveled 75,000 miles across Asia and Africa and recorded his epic adventures in a travel book. On to February 25th, 1951, Continental Competition. The first Pan American Games began in Argentina with an opening ceremony in Buenos Aires. More than 25,000 athletes from across the nations of the Americas competed in various sporting events. 1986, new leader. After the People Power Revolution led to the end of dictatorship in the Philippines, a new democratic era began when Corazon Aquino was sworn in as the country's first female president. She ruled for 6 years, during which time she strengthened civil rights. And in 1964, heavyweight champion, Black American boxer Cassius Clay, later known as Muhammad Ali, took the title of World Heavyweight Champion after his rival Sonny Liston retired after their 6th round in the ring at Miami Beach, Florida. He went on to become the first boxer to win the World Championship 3 times. Also on this day in 1570, Pope Pius V removed England's Queen Elizabeth I from the Catholic Church when she re-established the separate Church of England as the nation's faith. In 1870, overcoming fierce opposition, Hiram Rhodes Revels became the first black person to take a seat in the U.S. Congress. And in 1992, the Russian space agency Roscosmos was founded to replace the Soviet space program. And born this day in 1841, Pierre-Auguste Renoir, French painter. He was an artist of the Impressionism school, which used light, color, and texture to capture impressions of the world. Next is February 26th, 1909, Kinemacolor. Motion pictures created using the first successful color film process, Kinemacolor, were shown for the first time at the Palace Theatre in London, UK. Kinemacolor was invented by British filmmaker George Albert Smith. 1616, Galileo silenced. The Roman Catholic Church banned Italian astronomer Galileo Galilei from teaching and sharing his theory that Earth orbits the Sun. At the time, it was believed that Earth was at the center of the solar system. It's 1919, the Grand Canyon. U.S. President Woodrow Wilson signed an act of Congress to make the Grand Canyon in Arizona an official national park. Today, this giant canyon, carved out by the Colorado River, receives about 6 million visitors a year. Also on this day in 1606, Dutch navigator Willem Janszoon became the first European to land in Australia. 1935, radio detection and ranging, or radar, was first demonstrated by Scottish physicist Robert Alexander Watson Watt to detect aircraft. And in 2008, the Svalbard Global Seed Vault, which stores seeds of food crops from around the world, was opened. It was built inside a mountain on the remote Norwegian island of Spitsbergen. Born this day in 1829, Levi Strauss, German-born U.S. entrepreneur. He set up the first jeans company to mass-produce the casual pants made from denim and patented the design of blue jeans. Next is February 27th. In 1594, Henry of Bourbon. Henry IV became the first noble from the House of Bourbon to be crowned King of France. His coronation marked the beginning of one of the most influential dynasties in Europe. The monarch brought peace and progress to France, earning him the nickname Good King Henry. 1998, costly cake. The most expensive slice of wedding cake sold for $29,900 at Sotheby's auction in New York, more than 60 years after it was baked. It was made in 1937 for the wedding reception of the Duke and Duchess of Windsor. The money raised at this sale was given to charity. What do you do with a 60-year-old slice of cake? You surely don't eat it. 1933, burning of Parliament. The German Parliament building known as the Reichstag was set on fire in a deliberate attack. Nazi leader Adolf Hitler blamed the fire on his communist opponents and used it as an opportunity to increase his own power. Also on this day in 1844, the Dominican Republic began a 12-year struggle for independence from Haiti on the Caribbean island of Hispaniola. In 1947, British physicist James Stanley Hay discovered that the sun emits radio waves. Hey. 1999, millions lined up at polling stations in Nigeria to elect a civilian president and replace 15 years of military rule with a democratic government. And born on this day in 1956, Meena Keshwar Kamal, Afghan activist. She established the Revolutionary Association of the Women of Afghanistan to promote the rights and education of women. She founded schools for refugee women and their children. Next is February 28th. Let's start in 202 BCE with the Han Dynasty. 4 centuries of the Han Dynasty started with the coronation of Liu Bang as Emperor Gaozu of Han. Born a peasant, Liu Bang became an influential leader who brought peace and prosperity to China. 1953, DNA structure. Using images of deoxyribonucleic acid taken by British scientist Rosalind Franklin, fellow scientists James Watson and Francis Crick revealed the double helix structure of DNA, announcing their discovery on this day. Their mapping of the DNA molecule helped scientists understand how genes pass between generations of families. And 2012, prehistoric penguins. Fossils found in New Zealand turned out to be Kairuku grebnefi, an extinct species of giant penguin, which stood almost as tall as humans. This bird lived 27 million years ago when much of the country was underwater. Also on this day in 1897, Queen Ranavalona III was forcibly removed as the last monarch of Madagascar by French troops, who took over the island in the Indian Ocean. In 1935, U.S. chemist Wallace Carothers invented nylon. This strong synthetic fabric was used to make stockings, as well as ropes and parachutes during World War II. And in 1991, the Gulf War ceasefire was declared by U.S. President George H.W. Bush after Iraq withdrew from Kuwait. And born this day in 1890, Vaslav Nijinsky, Russian ballet dancer and choreographer. Known as the god of dance, he used his creative ideas and athletic physique to transform the role of men in ballet. And finally, we have Leap Day, February 29th. 1964, the Blackbird unveiled. U.S. President Lyndon B. Johnson revealed the Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird, a spy plane that could reach record-breaking speeds of up to 2,000 miles per hour and an altitude of 70,000 feet. 1912, Moving Stone. The Piedra Movediza, or Moving Stone of Tandil in Argentina, mysteriously fell and broke into pieces. Delicately balanced at the top of a hill, this ancient rock had been a symbol of the city of Tandil since it was founded in 1823. Poor rock. And in 2012, the tallest tower. Following nearly 4 years of construction, the Tokyo Sky Tree in Japan was completed. Soaring 2,080 feet into the sky, the building remains the world's tallest tower. Also on this day in 1692, 3 women were accused of witchcraft in colonial Massachusetts, leading to public hysteria and the famous Salem witch trials. 1940, with her win for Best Supporting Actress in Gone with the Wind, Hattie McDaniel became the first black actor to win an Oscar. And in 1996, the siege of Sarajevo ended after nearly 4 years of fighting in the capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the loss of 13,000 lives. And born this day may be the most interesting fact in the whole book. In 1960, 1964, and 1968, the Henriksen children, Norwegian Leap Day siblings. All 3 Henriksen siblings, Heidi, Olav, and Leif Martin, celebrate their birthday once every 4 years on this day. That's remarkable. There won't be a leap day this year, but there will be next year, so look forward to that. So thank you so much for watching. I do hope that you found this video relaxing and educational, and I hope that you have a very good